There we go. Recording in progress. I didn't tell you this before we started, worshipful brother Michael Kurcab, but congratulations. You are officially my 100th episode of the
Oh,
Spirit
wow.
Company podcast. We're up to triple digits.
Well, I am honored to be part of your centennial episode.
There you go. You saw the aprons, right? In Ontario, when Lodge turns 100, their regalia switches from silver to gold. Maybe I should do a gold trim or something on the
there you go.
On the thumbnail for this video. But welcome from
and you're
Las
speaking
Vegas.
to somebody in the Silver State.
There you go. That's right, Nevada. Why is Nevada the Silver State? Mining? Is it?
Mining, yeah.
Nice. You never think of Nevada and Vegas in particular, right? You always think about casinos and poker chips and stuff like that. But other very fun things. But yeah, silver mines. Are there silver mines around Las Vegas or where?
A lot of them are kind of more up north, Virginia City, kind of the historic mines. I mean, there are mines everywhere. There are a lot of gypsum mines and other minerals here in southern Nevada. Some fertilizer stuff, that kind of thing. And then most of it's all Bureau of Land Management owned. Most of Nevada is owned by the federal government. So
there you go. Well, one place that isn't owned by the federal government, but I had the pleasure of visiting it, was the Masonic Memorial Temple. When I was in Las Vegas for the Nevada Lodge of Research meeting, I had a great time. I got the chance to meet yourself. And I wanted to have you on the podcast. And it works so well that this is the 100th episode. It's, a special number, and it's a special episode for me because we're talking about what's always been my favorite lecture in Freemasonry, the first lecture I ever did in Freemasonry, in any degree. It's the working tools. I particularly love the secondary working tools, the Canadian version of them, which I had the chance to exemplify, but even the American version of them. I'm very fond of it. And when I met you, you had the chance to talk to me about a book that you wrote, applying the working tools of Freemasonry to leadership skills and qualities. So before we go into that, though, tell us a little bit about yourself, your Masonic journey. You're a fellow secretary, so my condolences. But yeah, just your involvement in Freemasonry in the Silver State.
Sure. So I was raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason on January 5th, 2008. And at Sandy Valley Lodge number 57 in beautiful Sandy Valley, Nevada. We, up until recently, actually met in an airplane hangar out in Sandy Valley. Due to recent global issues, we actually relocated our lodge to Pahrump, Nevada, which is right next door to Sandy Valley. While we still serve the community of Sandy Valley, we meet elsewhere now. But I lived in the small community of Sandy Valley, which is a very small rural town of Nevada. And I had no idea what Freemasonry was. I never learned of it as a kid. I wasn't in DMLA. I really didn't know anything about it. And I'm an audio engineer by trade. And when my family and I moved to Sandy Valley, I was providing audio system services for local groups, our town board meetings, that sort of thing. And a gentleman came up to me and asked me if he could use or rent my sound system for an event he was having at this airplane hangar for the Masonic Lodge. And I said, sure, not a problem. I asked, what is it? I said, it's like a local organization. You guys do things for the community? Like, yeah. I said, okay, well, you can just use it. I'll come and set it up for you. And he said, well, you can set it up, but you can't be in there to operate it because it's a secret meeting. It's closed to non-Masons. Well, that piqued my interest. I was like, okay, well, tell me more about this. And long story short, here I am. That's how I got involved in Masonry. From there, just like most people who get involved in Masonry, you find yourself giving lectures and then sitting in a chair and moving around the chairs, and ultimately ended up being in the East in 2015, which was Nevada's sesquicentennial, our 150th anniversary of both the state and Freemasonry in Nevada. And then after that, it was, well, time to be in the secretary seat.
So you mentioned receiving lectures. Um, you know, what was it, or what is it about the working tool lectures that piqued your interest, and caused you to, many years later, I guess not many years, a few years later, caused you to consider writing about them?
Well, it really started as just a journaling exercise for me. One of the things about Freemasonry that has really struck me is obviously the symbolism, but more specifically of what do we do with these lectures that were presented, right? When we're emblematically presented these working tools that we're supposed to use in improving ourselves, right? What does that actually look like? And you sit through a degree and you're told a lot of different things. You hear a lot of words in a very short amount of time. And so it takes a lot of reflection and research and reading and observing degrees after you go through it for a lot of those things to really, sink in. And then, if you're, really interested in masonry, you find yourself in every aspect of your life, when you have to make a decision at work or in your family, you start to think about, okay, how does this apply to what I'm doing right now? And it's trial and error. Sometimes we make mistakes with our tools, especially early on. Sometimes we try and to use them in a certain way, and maybe it's using a common gavel where maybe a plumb rule should be applied. You learn for trial and error. So I started journaling just my experiences with it and kind of reflecting more on it. And that journal became basically the working tools in different chapters. And so that's how the book got started.
And what was it about, the idea of leadership in particular, and using the working tools, or applying the lessons of the working tools to the idea of being a leader or leadership? Because there are a lot of different areas, obviously, Freemasonry touches upon and can improve, whether it be self-discipline, or there's multiple areas. What was it particularly about leadership and the working tools? Where did that connection come in for you?
It was simply where I was in my own life. I had just become a husband, not too long before that, married in 2007, and had kids. So I became a father. And then at work, I was working at one of the hotels here in town at the time. I was on a leadership track, moving up the executive path at one of the hotels. So I found myself in positions of leadership and having to deal with a lot of the challenges that every leader has to face. And so that's where I started really reflecting more on the working tools of, as to be a rule and guide for some of the actions that I had to take and some of the decisions I had to make. And as I started thinking more about it, and then, leadership lessons in Lodge itself, right? As you become a leader of an organization, those same principles apply. And so because I found myself knee deep in leadership development at that period of time, I think the symbolism of the working tools simply lent itself to what I was doing at the time, right? Had I been on a different track, I'm sure I would have found those lessons still, applicable, but maybe in a different way.
Now, you mentioned journaling. Is journaling something that you started as a response to your Masonic journey, or is journaling something that you've always done in your life?
I've always done it at some level. I am not one of those people that every day I find time to write, because I don't. I will sometimes, I'll go on a string of days and write for 5 days straight, and then it may be 2 months before I open that journal again, and then I do some catch up and that kind of stuff. So it really depends where I am in my own mind and in my own life. But it is something that I do a lot of.
How would you say that journaling has affected your Masonic experience?
How has it's been an outlet for me to write down ideas that when a certain symbol or certain lesson strikes me a certain way, it allows me to put it down in words and then read it back to myself and solidify that, yes, that is a lesson I was supposed to learn from whatever that symbolism was. Or, come back to it later and go, yeah, you know what? Maybe I didn't apply that correctly. You always second guess yourself when you make decisions like that. As a matter of fact, I'm actually working on the not revision, but the 10th anniversary of the book, which will be 2 years from now. And I'm already expanding on and kind of revisiting some of the concepts of some of those working tools and what I've learned since then. So.
Yeah, I'm just very, I think it's a great thing to bring up. Hopefully other Masons take a lesson from it. I'm always encouraging new Masons, well, not really just any Mason, to take the time to be reflective about the Masonic experience and their experiences within it. And journaling just seems like an excellent way to do that. I mean, when you're a new Mason, everything kind of comes at you so fast, especially in that first degree. It can be hard to process it. And then it almost becomes the opposite problem. When you become experienced in Freemasonry, if you're very active, you can attend, you hear the same words in the same ceremonies so often, it starts to kind of wash over you. And journaling just seems like one way for a Mason to continually evaluate and reevaluate his experiences within the lodge and how he feels within the lodge, and perhaps how he can improve his lodge experience or improve the experiences of others. I mean, I don't think journaling is the only way to do it, right? But it seems like a very good idea, and what a great thing to have. Do you keep your journals?
I do. I have a lot of different journals, and it's funny. My journals are, they comprise of a whole bunch of either moleskin books for different topics. I have some more hardbound ones that I do some, I'm going to refine some stuff, and then I have my daily no, that's not one. There's my daily scratch where I'll write down ideas and put Post-its in there and all kinds of. I'm some people are audible learners, some are kinesthetic, some are visual. I've taken multiple tests. I'm all three, and so I will write some. I have my audio journal on here that I take voice notes as I'm driving along somewhere or walking somewhere and I don't have a journal, and that'll keep going for a couple of days, and then I'll try to transcribe that somewhere. So I am not a structured journaler by any means.
I mean, it's structured or unstructured. You talk about everybody learns and does things differently, right? Just having those journals, right, and being able to go back to your journal entries from around the time you were initiated, or even before when you were first looking at joining the craft, right? That's a great thing to have in terms of understanding your Masonic journey and how it's changed and how your views of the craft have changed. I liked also what you talked about, the different types of learning. That's something I think is pretty relevant. So, that's why, for example, when I'm doing my lecture or a lecture, I always I avoid just speaking to the candidate, because not everybody retains information just by hearing it, right? That's why, for example, with the tools, I'll make a point to hand them the tools while I'm speaking, because some people retain information in a tactile sense better. They have to actually be holding something or feel something. If there's nothing to necessarily hand to the candidate, I'll walk around with them so that they can kind of link up the lecture to where they were in the lodge and different placements. I just think it's important, whenever you can do a lecture, whenever you have the privilege of doing a lecture, right? Don't just speak the words, try to add something to it, because the candidate may not retain information the best in that way, right? Like how do you find the lodge experience for yourself when you're performing a lecture, when you're thinking about the tools, working with the tools? How do you think about those lectures and performing those lectures for a candidate?
Well, so let's start with the middle chamber, because that's one I do on a fairly frequent basis. I really like that one. We have a full visual aid to accompany the lecture itself, and that is also accompanied by motions around the lodge. So we get to combine everything all at once. Going back a little bit, one of the nice things about Freemasonry in terms of personal development and leadership development is it really gives everybody an opportunity who wants to develop their public speaking skills. When I first started in Masonry, my public speaking skills were not all that great. And, my fear of public speaking was, it was pretty high. But, since being involved in lodge and giving lectures, and, now people really kind of want to tell me to shut up sometimes, but
Me too. Don't worry. Me too.
But no, just like you, and by the way, for the audience, worshipful brother Cameron here, when he did exemplify the working tools during a lodge of research, I was lucky enough to be his audience, the recipient of those emblematical tools during that. So thank you for that. I enjoyed that.
I enjoyed it as well. It was a pleasure to be able to provide it. So the Ontario or Canadian brethren listening, middle chamber lecture would be equivalent to our senior wardens lecture in the second degree. Basically the same idea, only there's some differences, but it's recognizable for what it is. You recognize it if you're in a Canadian lodge. It's a senior wardens lecture.
To get back to your earlier question though about the experience in the lodge with the lectures, as a audience member, as an observer or a spectator, I make it a point to always, regardless of how many times I've heard the lecture or seen the degree done, pay close attention to it, because I always find something in there that's happening in my own life right then and there, that degree or that lecture will provide a little bit of guidance or thought nugget on for me to go, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And so, it doesn't matter how doesn't matter how many times I see a degree. It's, I will always try to pay attention. Also, if I don't have an active part in the degree, it's being respectful to the candidate or the brother going through the degrees, as well as the people who are performing the degree, right? That's part of, I think, our Masonic decorum as well, to give respect to a lot of those people. Sometimes you hear about the people on the sidelines who will still talk during it, or not really give the attention necessary during those solemn degrees. And so I try to make sure that we are doing that for the person who is receiving the degrees. As a person giving the degrees, I do my best to make sure that I know the parts, I know other people's parts, so that way it can flow smoothly. Now, do I forget lines? Absolutely, on a regular basis, right? And you have to be prompted. But still, I'd like to see the newer brothers come up and take these parts from me one day. And, I want to try to provide as good of an example as I can for them.
what
that answer your
extent
question?
it does,
Okay.
to what extent does, or to what extent is paying attention um kind of becoming a lost art? I something I worry about seeing it in lodge. You'll see during a lecture, during a master's address, whatever it is, the phones come out, somebody's got their head down, you can see the screen shining on their face, or just you can tell somebody's zoned out. I know it's, if you've heard the lecture enough times, it can be a challenge necessarily
Mm-hmm.
to pay attention. But I also wonder, I mean, I can only speak from my experience in Freemasonry, joining it in 2007. Did the people, did the Masons of the 50s and then the 40s have these attention problems? Now, they didn't have phones, but even without that difference, I just feel like attention is slowly becoming a lost art amongst both within and without Masonic circles.
I would agree with that premise. So and we see it in marketing, right? How quick, how much time do you have to capture someone's attention for an advertisement these days before they scroll past it, right? Our attention span is very tiny compared to what it once was, only because we've been conditioned to it. We get so many data points thrown at us at any point in time, through video, through how many times our phone dings for every single notification that we get on any social media app, any communication app, any productivity app, any news app, right? There's always somebody vying for our attention. It's almost a competition. And so it's who we give our attention to is where I think on a personal level, we're not too cognizant of anymore, right? To give somebody or something your attention means to give somebody your time. And the more you divide that among all these other distractions, the less time you have to give to those things that are important in your life. Is it different from the 50s or the 40s or the 1700s? I don't know. I think a certain amount of repetition as we get older and tired. I think it's maybe nodding off might have been more common distraction back in those days before technology. And I'm only guessing because I wasn't there. I really don't know. But I think those who get a lot out of Masonry pay attention. Those who are ready to get a lot out of Masonry will pay attention. Those who want to get a lot out of Masonry will pay attention to the level that they feel they need to. And I think the more they get involved in Masonry and the more Masonry gets involved in their lives, I think they tend to pay attention more. So it's, the brother who performed my initiation when I became an entered apprentice took me aside that first day and said, look, Masonry, you will get everything out of it and more that you put into it. And I think that's true.
And going back to kind of how we met, or the purpose of this this episode, right? One thing that you've gotten out of Freemasonry is, from the working tools in particular, right, is lessons in leadership, or lessons on how to be a leader. So first, because we can only talk so much, where can people find your work? I'll leave links in the description to how they can order it. And also, what are some of the leadership lessons that the working tools have imparted within you?
Well, first, it's available on Amazon. This is the book, The Working Tools of Leadership, Applying the Teachings of Freemasonry. And and I talk about this in the introduction in the book. I use the working tools as they're presented in the jurisdiction of the state of Nevada, recognizing that there are other working tools out there in other jurisdictions and slightly different lectures associated with them. But so I just kind of took the ones that were common here and that, exist in other jurisdictions, and then just extrapolated, new meaning outside of what we're told in Freemasonry to them. And so that's the disclaimer there. It's not necessarily, it's not teaching Masonic lectures in this book. It's just simply applying, these lessons in a way to leadership that, there are obviously other ways you can use these tools in leadership as well. This is not a definitive a book on these things, right? This is how I use them, how I was reflecting on them at the time. And like I said, I've even learned new ways since then. That being said, looking at the 24-inch gauge, for example, that's time management, right? And I talk about time management and I break it down into applying that at home and leadership roles in our homes. If we're, part of a family with a spouse and kids and that kind of stuff, or even, if you're a son and, have leadership roles for your elderly parents, there are ways to apply those things as well. At work, same thing, proper time management to, make sure that you're providing the best possible work you can for your employer or for your customer. And also, then in lodge, making sure that you're using your time wisely to help the lodge grow, to help those Masons that are showing up get the most they can out of lodge. And I think, it's funny because I think we do ourselves a pretty big disservice sometimes about just joining everything we possibly can without thinking about what it's going to do to our time management skills. Getting back to why I haven't joined Grand Lodge.
That is definitely a Masonic challenge. How much time do you have versus what can you join? What led you to, you discussed this earlier, to start working on some revisions and some updates of the work? What is it that inspired you to kind of revisit this and perhaps update or revise?
Well, I like to think that I've grown and changed since I first wrote this in 2014. That's been, 7 years. And since then, I've had kids grow older, enter different stages of their lives. And so I found, revisiting some of what I wrote about, is it still applicable to how I'm approaching life as a parent or as a husband, as we face new challenges? And then getting through Corona, this has been challenging. And even for some of the most seasoned leaders out there, it's been challenging on so many levels. And so being able to look at the working tools and go, okay, how am I responding to this? And am I doing so using the tools that I've been given? Some days it's yes, some days it's no, right? There are some days, let's face it, over the past 2 years, we've all in this entire world been faced with so much stress and so many external forces that are acting on us that sometimes it's like, I'm just going to put my tools down for a second and go walk away, because you kind of have to. And so I'm looking at that and revisiting, some of that in the light of a global pandemic. And then, also pivoting at that point, because you have to, when you're forced into a situation where you have to look at your way of providing for your family, and you find yourself having to use new skills perhaps to find new sources of income, or pare back on other activities so that you can get more income to offset an economic situation in the world. All these things play a part in stress and leadership and in all those organizations. So it was it was, as I pondered that, I realized it was time to maybe expand upon some of that. And so I looked at it and said, wow, it's going to be 10 years since I wrote the first edition. So why not just make it a 10th anniversary edition and expand it at that point?
You bring up an interesting point. When you're talking about kind of the challenges, the challenges everybody's faced over the last 2 years or so, but especially the challenges that leaders and people in leadership roles have faced over the last 2 years. One thing I wonder, do people even necessarily want leaders anymore? Because it seems like people are far more interested in tearing anybody who could be in a potential leadership role. They're far more interested in tearing them down than kind of being supportive therein. If a leader's, well, I guess that's the better question, right? Is how would you define a leader in the first place? And do you think that 2021, that the people, in 2021 are actually interested in leadership, or are they interested rather in, it seems more and more to me, kind of doing their own thing and not necessarily listening to anybody in a place of authority?
Well, okay, that's a loaded question. Because that can go a couple different ways, right? So let's go back to, I'm going to go back to the context of my book for a second, and using Masonry. So Masonry is not about me improving you. It's about me improving me, right? So with the aid of the lodge and the aid of the tools presented and the symbolism there and the support structure that is Freemasonry, right? We support each other as we improve ourselves. So one, I'm a leader in my own life, and I need to make decisions that can make sure that I am setting myself up for success. So that's point one. Number two, I have a family, so I am a leader in my family. I'm a husband and a father. So how can I be the best possible father and husband that I can be? That is a leadership role. My children view me as a leader. My wife views me as a leader. I view her as a leader. Same thing. So taking it down those steps there first. So leadership there, we want strong leaders, right? I want to be strong to be able to lead myself through some challenges. I want to be strong to lead my family through challenges and to lead them to success. Moving on, in my work, right? I own a couple businesses and I'm an employee. So I want to make sure that I am leading my teams in either of those cases towards the goal of whatever our goals are for the business and guiding them through, whether it's pandemic, whether it's competition, inflation, supply chain issues, any of that, right? That's where those are points of stress where those leadership traits need to come through. So there, yes, people need leadership because not everybody can lead through those types of situations successfully. They don't have the skill set. It's not that they can't, it's just they haven't developed the skill set yet. Moving on to lodge, same thing, right? We've been in leadership positions of our lodge. We look at membership. We look at, who's engaged, who isn't, who needs help. Are we making our bills? Are we, doing what we said we're going to do for the community? Are we able to do that? So that applies. Now, getting to the bigger picture of, I think what you were referring to is, I think we have I think we've delegated too much leadership to elected and appointed officials. And that's where I think it sounded like you were going, right? I don't consider any of those folks leaders. I consider them elected and appointed officials. We, the people, are the leaders. If we delegate our responsibility for leadership, then yeah, we're going to be disappointed.
So then, I mean, it could be elected or appointed in like the political sense. It could be elected or appointed in just the lodge sense, I suppose, right? More this idea of like if a leader's role, let's say in lodge, for example, right? If the role of the leader or one role of a leader could be to put the interests of the group ahead of the interests of the of an individual, uh, right? How does that translate into, for example, a lodge setting where you may have, multiple brethren with different ideas about what's best, either for the lodge or what's best for the individual, or those two things may come into conflict? It just seems to me that oftentimes, and again, this might be rose-colored glasses because I wasn't around in the 50s, so this could just be based on what I see on the TV. It seems like, or what I read, what I read in the minute books from lodge in the 1950s. It seems like at that time, the needs or the interest of the collective, going back to minute books, the needs of the lodge were considered more relevant than perhaps individual concerns. Whereas in 2021, it seems oftentimes the individual has been kind of put on a pedestal. Perhaps it's a social media thing. Like, you see the way social media is very me kind of centric, right? Selfie culture. Or maybe it's, again, that could just be a rose-colored glasses approach. But that is something I worry about, is how do you be a leader in 2021 when so much emphasis seems to be placed on individual value over kind of collective good, lodge good, and then you can expand that out however much you want to, or
Well, first and foremost, I think the important piece about the lodge, right? So let's look at the lodge for a second. It's, you come to the lodge of your own free will and accord. You are given the lessons of Freemasonry, and you act accordingly. Not necessarily everybody may agree. That happens. Not everybody sticks around. Not everybody goes through all the degrees. Not everybody continues to pay their dues. But at the end of the day, at least in lodges I've been in, it's still a democratic process where, as long as the whatever's being voted on doesn't impede against, the Masonic Code or any of our obligations, or the bylaws of the lodge, and doesn't harm any individual, doesn't cause any harm, right? Then there's not necessarily anything wrong with what's happening at that point. I guess I'm kind of, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by, putting an individual on a pedestal. I'm not quite sure there. If you can help me maybe understand that, maybe I can better answer.
Well, so examples could be, keeping it general, vaccination mandates would be one, right? Where so I know every jurisdiction has different rules about what is and isn't required. In Ontario, Grand Lodge has, our Grand Lodge has required vaccination, proof of vaccination to attend a lodge meeting, as has been done in like Manitoba. Minnesota, they're requiring it for events, I don't know about at the lodge level, whereas other jurisdictions don't, which every jurisdiction, right? That's one of the Masonic, and this is just one example, right, of many you could apply, right? Every Masonic jurisdiction is sovereign within its boundaries. So every Masonic jurisdiction has the right to make decisions as they see best and they see most fit for their lodges, right? But it's this idea of, Grand Lodge is, in Ontario, Grand Lodge is setting up a rule which they are doing because they believe that's the best way to protect the lodges as a whole. But then you run into the challenge of, well, does the individual, if they don't want to get vaccinated for whatever reason, right? Whether it be religious or whatever reason it may be. Um, where do you find the balance? And I just like, and I look back at the 50s, because this is something I've been studying a little bit, because I plan to write a paper on it. Masonic temples used to be kind of one of the main sites of vaccination. They were one of the main places where people got vaccinated. The Windsor Masonic Temple held multiple vaccination clinics, right? And there was no anti-vaccination sentiment that I could find. I'm sure there was, but if it was, it was very quiet, right? But now with social media, all the rest of it, like the individual is perhaps more empowered to say, like, no, this is wrong. I don't agree with this. So that's one example. I mean, it could be multiple examples of.
Keeping it in, safety is an interesting topic, right? Because there's no such thing as safe. There's no such thing as safe. Nothing is safe. And
well, so true. There's
try to create a world of 100% safety, I think, is folly. And that's where I think some leaders fall down, because they feel they need to, right? In order to gain the trust of the groups that they're leading, they sometimes feel pressured to create that sense of safety. But at what cost? Any pharmaceutical, vaccination or pill or whatever, any pharmaceutical has side effects, some mild, some severe, some fatal. The challenge is nobody knows who's going to get what side effect and at what level. And so that's where I think it's a hard decision for anybody to make, for anyone else. I come down on the side of a informed consent between an individual and their primary care physician, and that should be the end of it. But what we're seeing is a lot of other conversations happening. So it's hard.
It's more the issue of, so once a decision is made, it could be on that. It could be on increasing dues in a lodge, right? And the person could feel like, if you increase the dues, it makes it, creates financial stress for me. Whereas the lodge is saying, we need to increase the dues in order to pay for the building, do these things we want to do, right? And yes, there's voting, there's democracy, but it seems as though as the individual becomes again, I think it's a social media effect, the question seems to become more and more, how does this affect me, as opposed to what's best necessarily for the lodge. And that's a leadership issue, right? How does a leader, if a decision, because the one thing a leader has to do is make decisions. If a leader makes a decision, how do you then communicate that and enforce that with individuals, or in this case, brothers, who, may feel as though it's an infringement upon their personal rights, or it's just something with which they disagree, right? How do you balance the need to make an unpopular decision with the feelings of those in a lodge, right? Because that seems to me, and this is a Masonic issue, it's a world issue, but I think in Freemasonry, even taking the pandemic out of it, I've seen this with lodge dues. I've seen this with building management, where an unpopular decision is made and then a group just takes their balls and goes home, right? And how does a leader, and I think the taking your ball and going home attitude is increasing. That's just my opinion. And I wonder if that's a failure of leadership, or just the world we're living in encourages that, and there's nothing a leader can do to kind of build a consensus in a 24/7 social media environment.
Well, at the end of the day, the world is filled with individuals that have their own idea of what they want out of life, what they think is best for themselves and their families. And you can't change that. It's human action, right? At the end of the day, we are all programmed for survival and survival of the species. And we all have fight or flight. And we all look at what we're doing and say, okay, I can do this now, but at the end of the day, I need to make sure that I can feed my family, be myself, keep myself healthy, have a roof over my head, that kind of stuff, right? The primary things that every individual needs to take care of for themselves. That is an individual thing. As we add more and more to our lives and we interact with more people and we trade with more people, our impact on others, we start to see, and others' impact on us, we start to see. In terms of an organization like Masonry, hard decisions have to be made. Dues have to be raised to keep up with inflation and maintenance of buildings and equipment. Everybody wants to be on social media, but nobody wants to buy a new computer. Okay, right? There are costs associated with these things. Things are not free, and so it becomes the leadership team, and this is where I think the leadership team of the lodge becomes important, because it's not just the worshipful master in the East making a decision. There's the senior ward and the junior ward and the trustees, the secretary, the officers of the lodge that are looking at the continuation and maybe building a plan, not just what's going to happen that 1 year, but what's going to happen in 5 years, what's going to happen in 10 years. And then communicating that to the lodge and getting the lodge's input of, where do you want to go as a lodge? How do you see our lodge? Do you want to do more events? Do you want to do more breakfast? Do you want more dinners, more table lodges, more festive boards? That sort of thing. If you want to do that, okay, great. Well, how are we going to do that? And ask for input and ideas and make people owners of those ideas. When they have ownership of it, they're more likely to do something about it, right? And when it comes time to raise dues to put that into action, they're more than likely to be on board because it's providing value in their life. Communicating that value as a leader, I think, is important. Getting buy-in from everybody is important. Everybody, if it was just one person saying, okay, I'm going to make a rough decision because I think this is the direction we need to go, that's kind of rough. Doesn't always work out that well.
So then is perhaps, and this goes back way to the start of our conversation, and the idea of attention and the challenge of paying attention, like, is it just a matter of perhaps somebody in a leadership role, having the stamina and the attention span to actually, develop buy-in and communication, as opposed to, because a simple thing can often be to just say, this is what we're doing because I'm the worshipful master, right? Or this is what we're doing because, you can kind of compare it to like the captain of a ship. This is the direction we're going because I'm the captain. But, that's a very different environment than Freemasonry, which is, as you said, everybody comes of their own free will and accord. And maybe you can't just, as a leader, order people to do X or Y. You actually have to take the time to develop buy-in and pay attention to how people are feeling and try to consider that when you're making decisions.
Well, I mean, it's at the end of the day, free will and accord or not, you issue commands and orders to do something. You only get so far with that, right? Because eventually you're going to upset somebody who is going to remove themselves from the organization or from that situation, right? It's the Aesop's fable of the sun and the north wind, and the idea of force of the north wind actually got the opposite response that he wanted. And I think we're seeing that today in a lot of things, right? I think that plays itself out really quite well. In terms of the lodge, though, when you look at the leadership team of a lodge, and I keep coming back to this idea of leadership team because I really don't think it's just one person. Yeah, there's the worshipful master has the ability to rule and govern the lodge as he sees fit for his year in the East. But, there's hopefully there's some sort of leadership plan and some development plan that he is using as his rule and guide to make those decisions. And that's the same could be said for any organization, right? What are the principles that he's making those decisions on? And if there is, dissent among the organization, okay, well, let's try to understand it. Let's empathize with some of the brothers out there that have challenges with what it is we're trying to do and understand why. Right? The more conversations we have, to your point, the attention span. Okay, well, maybe in lodge, maybe that's not the time to have that conversation. Maybe we go out for coffee afterwards. Let's talk about this. Right? Let's have a conversation. Just the one-on-one type conversations to understand a brother's challenges with something. It may help him change his mind. It may help us change ours. We don't know, but it eliminates the distraction of a phone conversation or other people talking and belaboring a point where people's attention spans might be low. And now it provides focus on, as to your point, an individual, and makes that individual feel valued in the organization.
That is, yeah, and that's a very good point, right? Lodge, yeah, and I've seen this. I'm sure you've seen it too. If a leader, if a worshipful master, if anybody tries to stuff too much into a lodge meeting, too many, difficult conversations or motions, like by the time you're in that second hour, like nobody's paying attention anymore, and sometimes a informal meeting over a cup of coffee is far more likely to create beneficial results, right? As opposed to trying to do it all in a lodge meeting.
And it's non-confrontational. You don't have other brothers standing up trying to argue against a point. It becomes a simple conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. I think it's a very good lesson for leaders within the craft. Although I suppose with anybody in any leadership position, like don't rely upon the meeting to get things done, because it can be very hard in a meeting to accomplish what you want. You're far better off to try to build consensus either before the meeting or after the meeting and bring it up next time, But I think this is, for me, and this has just been my struggle in life, I think over the last 2 years, it's really come to a focus, but over something I've always struggled with is, you brought up during this conversation, and I think you're absolutely correct. We human beings, evolved with personal needs first and foremost. We need to take care of ourselves. We need shelter. We need food. We're evolved to consider what is best for ourselves and how best to achieve that. But then we also, and not just humans, any animal that exists in groups is evolved to a certain extent to consider the necessity and the needs of the group, because that's part of survival. I mean, I wrote a paper in law school talking about, punishment in the criminal justice system. And I started talking about other, even schools of fish, which are probably as far different from us as you can get, evolved ways to deal with individuals in the school who are perhaps, individual fish who are perhaps not pulling their weight, punishments against them. And it seems that, this is as old as time, right? The struggle between an individual doing what he feels is best for himself and a group trying to enforce norms and rules as to what it considers to be best for that group. And it just seems more and more, I'm not sure where the best place is to draw the line, but it seems like whether it be Freemasonry or society at large, the line is shifting more and more towards the individual gets to decide what's best for himself. And I'm not sure if that's the healthiest approach, especially as a leader.
That's very interesting.
As a leader, I worry perhaps leadership is struggling with that too, because you can, lead all you want, but if individuals are saying this is what's best for me, so I could care less what the leadership says, like, you can only lead so much. You can only worship masters so much. You can only CEO so much before those two things start to coincide. I think we might have even seen it with the Great Resignation, right? 4.4 million people, I think it was, quit their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that was based on this idea of like, screw you, boss, I want to go and pursue my own things?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of it had to do with it. I think, if anything, the pandemic. So I think a couple of things. It's interesting that you say you see a shift towards the individual. I've seen it go the other way. It seems to me we're shifting towards the collective, which I also think is not necessarily a healthy thing, right? I think there's a balance that needs to exist, but to me, it seems like it's gone in an unhealthy direction the other way, just from my own observation. So it's interesting to hear you say that your observations have led you to see that. On the Great Resignation, right? A lot of people were forced out of work. Okay. And it brought about the idea of, oh, okay, well, I still have a mortgage, still got to feed my family. What am I going to do? What can I do? All right, well, I'm in a situation where I really have to think about what I want to do. And oh, by the way, there's a pandemic, which means if this thing really is as deadly as they say it is, I start thinking about my own life and my own death and what I really value out of life. Do I really like my job? Is it bringing me joy? Or is there something I'd rather do? Is there something I can do now that I'm not working, that my focus is somewhere else? Can I work on building what it is I want out of life to provide for my family? Right? I think a lot of people went down that path. I was one of them.
I mean, yeah, I agree completely. I think you're right. A lot of people definitely did go down that path. And yeah, it's interesting you say, like, we're both, I wonder if we're both seeing the same thing, but just from different, like, it seems like it's like a response and then another response type of idea, right? So like, and like you talked about the pushback or the Aesop's fable, right? Like, when perhaps those in society in general, right, in leadership roles, try to enforce a rule and a certain group of people don't want it enforced, or say it's not right for me, whatever it might be, they say, well, no, screw you, I'm going to go more to that. And then the response from organizations is to become more heavy-handed, which causes more pushback, which becomes more heavy-handed. Like, it's a never-ending cycle of this idea, which it's just fascinating to see the way in which these issues permeate down to the Masonic level and the lodge level, and vice versa, right? How the conflicts and fights that you sometimes see in lodges permeate up, right? This goes all the way back to Prince Hall and the formation of Prince Hall, right? Like, it's as much as Freemasonry likes to think it kind of separates itself from the world, it's still part of it in one way or the other. So I just think it's a really,
we're still human beings.
We are, unfortunately. I kind of wish we were all robots sometimes. I feel like that would make life a lot simpler. But I
Not
really
as fun,
enjoyed.
but simpler.
It's that balance, right? Sometimes simple might be more fun, but you're right. It would definitely be less fun if we were all robots. There'd be less conversations like this, that's for sure. I really did very much enjoy this conversation. I'm happy to have you on this 100th episode. Just one more time, I'll throw the link down in the description, but where can we find your book? And also, where should we be paying attention for your revised version? When might that be coming out? And will it also be available on Amazon?
Everything will be available on Amazon. I do list my work on michaelkurcab.com. That's my personal website. I have my business links on there and all that fun stuff as well. It's not very Masonic other than the links to the book. It's more my businesses and consulting and that type of stuff. So it's not very Masonic per se. And really, I don't do as much on social media anymore. I've actually withdrawn from social media mostly. So while I have a presence on social media, it's not active. I wouldn't go there for anything current or anything.
We have social media is an interesting place. That's for sure. But it's probably for the best. But
I'm on a social media sabbatical, I think, for an extended period of time.
That's probably smart. But
I'm less stressed because of it.
Well, I think a lot of people would be, social media, I think it's a tool, it's got its benefits, that's for sure, but it definitely can add to stress for a lot of people.
And distractions.
And makes it hard to pay attention. Yeah. Well, how many of those phones that get pulled out in lodge are checking their Facebook, right? Or checking their Twitter, or checking their whatever it is. So
yeah, I'm at lodge right now.
Yeah. So turn off your phones before you go into the lodge room. Or, I leave my phone outside the lodge room. So one place I don't bring it in with me is when I'm in a lodge room. For a meeting anyways, I always leave the phone outside. That way it stops it from turning on by, those little gremlins that turn it on when you think you turn it to silent. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
For meeting with me earlier than we thought. And yeah, thank you for also meeting with me at the Lodge of Research. I got to identify the tools for you, but it was great to meet you there and learn more about your Masonic journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me on the 100th episode. And again, thank you for presenting me emblematically the working tools at the Lodge of Research. I appreciate that. And I hope to see you in Lodge here in Vegas again soon.
I would love to come back.